weeks before March 19th, 2003, the date that the United States invaded Iraq. What this article talks about is very interesting. It reads that Aaron Fraud investigates what could have been the very first batteries and how these important archaeological and technological artifacts are now at risk from the impending war in Iraq. War can destroy more than a people, an army, or a leader. Culture, tradition, and history also lie in the firing line. Iraq has a rich national heritage. The Garden of Eden and the Tower of Babel are said to have been sited in this ancient land. In any war, there is a chance that priceless treasures will be lost forever. Articles such as the ancient battery that resides defenseless in the Museum of Baghdad. And this was written, again, several months before the museum was looted, which I'll get to in just a moment. But the article continues, for this object suggests that the region whose civilizations gave us writing and the wheel may have also invented electric cells 2,000 years before such devices were well known. And so the pictures that you see before you on the screen, these are reenactments, recreations of this Baghdad battery, and there are people that have actually put this into application and found out that it actually works. After looking at this report, I went back and looked at the other report from the BBC just several months later, and it reads from the BBC News here, looters ransack Baghdad Museum. Thousands of valuable historical items from Baghdad's main museum have been taken or destroyed by looters. Michael, when I look at these things taking place, it's like a parallel script to Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Absolutely, and I need to remind your viewers that archaeology does not have its origins in a noble profession. It does. It has emerged, and in many ways still represents, tomb robbing and treasure hunting. He who has more funding and has deeper pockets will be able to do more things and go into more distant lands and explore more incredible ruins and take the loot for themselves. And that has been the case with archaeology for 200 years now.
Sure, he who has the knowledge has the power.
Exactly. But the whole looting of the Baghdad Museum is obviously a very key moment in human history, and many people believe that the entire invasion of Baghdad and of Iraq actually had very little to do with anything we imagine, whether it's oil or whether it's Saddam Hussein, but had everything to do with the information and the valuable items that were kept in the Baghdad Museum that are direct links to ancient civilizations, our extraterrestrial technology, our links to ETs and many Stargate systems and structures and specific activator key components to activate Stargate technology and so forth. And as strange and as weird as this may sound to some people, let me tell you what, this is probably closer to the truth than anything else, because you can imagine imagine in Second World War Berlin or London when the bombs started falling. I think the last thing on people's minds was, hey honey, let's go down to the museum and take some cool stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff in the museum. Let's just go take it for ourselves. That's the last thing that will cross your mind. So the fact that the Baghdad Museum was completely looted and raided and virtually nothing left within 48 hours of the first bombs falling on Baghdad is a highly, highly suspicious bit of information.
Well, now you're going into another very interesting area. I've read some things by William Henry, and he's been talking for years about the potential existence of a Stargate underground in Iraq. Saddam Hussein is well known, this is documented fact, to have claimed that he was the reincarnated spirit of King Nebuchadnezzar, a well-known character from the Bible. And again, we're talking about Iraq, where all these ancient things have taken place from Babylon. Many things that we're talking about tonight, in addition to Africa, also a place where much turbulence is going on. I really wonder why, Michael, there's so much going on right now in that region, a place of great history, and I can't help but speculate if it has any connection with the completion of the Mayan calendar.
everything that you mentioned is inextricably linked, and it's important to raise this and make people aware of it. Nothing we're doing today is separate from what the people in Southern Africa were doing 285,000 years ago. That is incidentally the date that I've come up with for the origins of this vanished civilization, around 285,000 years. There's a number of reasons why I say this, but I don't think we got enough time to go into that. But there are a number of scientific and geological evaluations that I've come up with, have found, that give me a deep sense of comfort to be able to say that. And all of that in South Africa and Southern Africa is directly linked to what we are doing today, how we're being manipulated, what our level of knowledge and information is, and how we are coming around to complete this weird full cycle that the Mayans have been talking about and predicting, the reaching of the conclusion of one age and the beginning of a new one. And this is spectacular information, because what we now know, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the measurements as well later that we have made in the stone structures in South Africa, so people know that I'm not just making this stuff up. We know that they were energy devices because we've measured it, and they're still active energy devices right now as we are speaking, giving us huge amounts of energy, far more so than the Baghdad batteries. And I need to just come back to that, Alex, very briefly. The Baghdad battery kind of technology is already the beginning of the post-Diluvian period, where the total control of the human race was already implemented through the hierarchical system and the feudal system that was introduced to the Sumerians by the high priests and the kings. As the Sumerian tablets tell us, when kingdom was lowered to earth from heaven, and priests and kings were appointed by the gods. And that's a very important point in human history, because it is at that point that the control and disinformation began. And we are now at the zenith and the apex of that control and disinformation. And therefore, we are finding people like you and I and millions of others that have reached the point of, sorry, I'm not going to believe that anymore. I need to find out the truth for myself. So the Baghdad battery is actually part of the disinformation, with the new era of so-called technology that was given to the humans. Prior to that, the technology was directly linked to free energy, the energy that exists freely around us everywhere and that makes up the entire universe. Remember, the first thing we get taught in science and physics is that energy cannot be destroyed. It just converts from one form to another, and the entire universe is one giant ball of energy. And so why are we paying for it? Because it was developed so that we have to pay for it, and we can be controlled through the supply of energy, which today we call electricity. Mm-hmm. But that is not what people like Ed Leeds-Kalnin, who built Coral Castle, used. It's not what John Keely discovered with his musical Dynosphere in 1888. It's not what Nikola Tesla gave the world. They gave the world a different sort of energy, a free energy, which is many of them refer to as radiant energy. And that radiant energy is crucially and inextricably linked, once again, to these stone circles in South Africa, which are still giving us huge amounts of this radiant energy. It is visible and measurable in forms of electromagnetic waves, in sound frequencies, and in heat signatures. But there's another aspect to it that we are completely unfamiliar with, that we don't understand how these three aspects fit together. It's just spectacular. As you said, the Mayan calendar is coming to a close, or the predictions of the age mm-hmm. of this age that the Mayans predict will come to an end in 2012.
Certainly.
And a new age will begin. And what's happening is that our desperate quest for free energy is now taking us to these new areas of understanding that we are learning from the ancient civilizations in Southern Africa. This is spectacular.
And as you were talking, I was having a recollection of my interview with John Searle, and he created something called the SEG generator, and it's based on free energy. And in the interview, he said that the information came to him in a dream from an ET. People also theorized about Tesla perhaps tapping into the collective consciousness and coming up with these ideas, which is why many people, Mike, are optimistic about the future, even if there was some sort of a meltdown of the grid as it currently is today. The potential that this knowledge, even if there's no electricity and the internet is disrupted, but that the knowledge will still be out of the Pandora's box, if you will, and it will continue no matter what happens. But I just want to mention really briefly, we read some news recently about the largest solar flare in 5 years, and we've been reading more reports about solar activity. And there's a lot of interesting information about what that actually does to the human body, the impacts of it, and the planet, links to increased earthquakes and volcanic activity. NASA released a updated projection on what they think we're going to see out of sunspot cycle number 24 and 25. One of the things they said is that in this cycle, even C-class flares and M-class flares will do more to disrupt the grid. Charged particles coming into our atmosphere, having its effect on the Earth in a stronger way than sunspot cycle 23 due to a weakening magnetic field. And this is all timed with the Mayan calendar, not the end of the world, but a point of great significance, where it appears to me that the planet is going to be bombarded with lots and lots of energy. And so this is a very, very interesting time, especially when we have mainstream admissions more and more every day that there is something going on out there that's changing. And despite the fact that NASA is involved in lots of cover-ups, there are other reports coming out about these stars they're finding and storms on Saturn and other planets warming up, in fact, over the course of the last several years. So it's an exciting time to be alive.
It truly is, and it's important once again to look at all this information we have and try and make some sense out of it. What does it all mean? Well, what it's telling us is that it's giving us the clues to try and understand where we're moving to, where we're going as a species. But before we can figure out where we're going as a species, well, I think it's important to understand who we are, where we come from, and why we're here, because that'll give us a lot more answers. And it's only when you know the origins that you can then string a line between the origins and where we're going to extrapolate a line of that makes some sort of sense to see where we are going. I have a problem with people that just say, well, I don't care about where we come from. The time is here and now. We're just moving in this direction. This is what's going to be happening. If you don't understand the past, how could you possibly try and predict the future?
Well, Michael, this is the thing that people have the issue with. They're trying to understand why any other intelligence other than human would be interested in humans. This is and I'm sure you come across this as well. It's this perception that many people have that there's nothing of interest about humans. Why would they be interested in us? And there's lots of interesting ways that people look at the situation without considering other possibilities, because I'm pretty convinced that chickens, not to be insulting to chickens, don't fully understand humans and how we control them and how we keep them in cages and how we live off of them for food and how we're pumping them up full of drugs. I'm sure they're partially aware they're in some sort of a cage, but I don't think they fully cognitively understand the psychology of the Homo sapiens. So, Michael, I'm thinking that we perhaps are not in a state of consciousness to fully understand what is truly actually happening around us in the interdimensional reality that we're coexisting with.
Absolutely. Very well put, Alex. Well done on that. That's exactly what it is. And I always say, if you're a farmer, you have a flock of sheep, and you don't want them to know what you do after hours, they will never find out, because you're in control. It's as simple as that. And therefore, we for so long have been in the dark because those that control us have not wanted us to find out. The one thing we have in our favor is consciousness. And I keep telling this more and more in my presentation, sharing this with people, that consciousness does not discriminate. It affects everybody equally. And because consciousness is some sort of a strange primordial field of the divine, that we're trying to define and understand, it cannot be stopped by rubber clothing or rubber boots or putting yourself into a Faraday cage to insulate yourself from it. It permeates everything